The jukebox wailed a heartbroken country tune, but Riley Harper didn't hear it. She was too busy staring at the woman who'd just walked into her bar, a stranger whose polished heels clicked like a countdown to trouble. By the third click, Riley knew this wasn't just another tourist lost in Willow Creek, Montana. The Rusty Nail was Riley's sanctuary, a dive bar carved from sweat and stubborn dreams. At 28, she'd built it from nothing, pouring her soul into its chipped wooden tables and flickering neon signs. Tonight, though, the air felt heavier, like the calm before a storm. The woman, tall, mid-30s, with a tailored blazer and eyes that could cut glass, slid onto a bar stool with the confidence of someone who owned the world. Riley wiped her hands on her flannel, her short brown hair falling into her eyes as she sized up the newcomer. "Whiskey neat," the woman said, her voice smooth as the liquor she ordered. "And keep the bottle close." Riley raised an eyebrow, grabbing the bottle from the shelf. "Rough day, or just showing off?" The woman smirked, her gaze lingering a beat too long. "Let's just say I'm here to make things interesting." Interesting didn't cover it. Elise Thornton was no ordinary customer. Riley didn't know it yet, but Elise was a real estate tycoon from Seattle, worth millions, with a reputation for snapping up small-town businesses like hers. The Rusty Nail, with its prime spot near the river, had caught Elise's eye months ago. She'd come to Willow Creek with a plan: buy the bar, flip it into a trendy gastropub, and add another notch to her empire. But there was something else, something personal. Elise had heard the rumors about Riley Harper, the tomboy bartender who kept to herself, who'd never been seen with a man. Elise assumed she knew why. And that assumption, that spark of curiosity, was about to set everything ablaze. Riley poured the whiskey, her hands steady despite the unease creeping up her spine. She'd grown up in Willow Creek, where whispers about her style, baggy jeans, flannel shirts, no makeup, had long labeled her as different. She didn't care. The bar was her world, her escape from a childhood spent dodging her father's fists and her mother's silence. But now, this woman's piercing stare felt like it was peeling back layers Riley had fought to keep hidden. "You got a name, or do I call you fancy?" Riley asked, leaning on the counter, her voice teasing but sharp. "Elise," the woman replied, swirling her drink. "And you're Riley, right? The one who runs this place like it's her kingdom." Riley's jaw tightened. "Something like that. What brings you to my kingdom, Elise?" Elise leaned closer, her perfume, something expensive, like cedar and jasmine, cutting through the bar's stale beer scent. "I'm looking for something unique. This place has potential. Ever thought about selling?" Riley laughed, short and bitter. "You're joking. This bar's my life. You'd have better luck buying my soul." Elise's smile didn't waver, but her eyes glinted with something dangerous. "Everything's for sale, Riley. You just need the right offer." The words hung between them, heavy with intent. Riley didn't know it yet, but Elise wasn't just talking about the bar. She'd seen Riley's confidence, her defiance, and mistaken it for something else, a challenge, a game. Elise was used to winning, used to getting what she wanted, whether it was property or people. And Riley, with her guarded charm and quiet strength, was already under her skin. The night wore on, and the bar filled with regulars, loggers, ranchers, and a few drifters passing through. Elise stayed, nursing her whiskey, watching Riley work. Every move Riley made, pouring drinks, joking with customers, wiping down the counter, felt like a performance Elise couldn't look away from. She noted the way Riley's laugh never quite reached her eyes, the way her hands lingered on the bar like it was an anchor. Elise was intrigued, maybe too much. She'd come to Willow Creek for a deal, but now she wondered if there was more to claim. "Last call," Riley announced hours later, her voice cutting through the hum of conversation. The crowd thinned, leaving just Elise and a couple of stragglers. Riley started closing up, her movements automatic but weary. She hadn't missed Elise's stares, the way they lingered like a question she wasn't ready to answer. "You don't belong here," Elise said suddenly, her voice low as Riley passed by. Riley stopped, turning to face her. Excuse me? This town. This bar. You're bigger than it, Elise said, standing now, closing the distance between them. I could change that. I could give you something more. Riley's heart thudded, not from the words but from the way Elise's eyes held hers, unflinching, like she saw something Riley didn't. For a moment she felt exposed, raw. Then she squared her shoulders. I don't need your more, lady. I've got everything I want right here. Elise tilted her head, undeterred. We'll see about that. As Elise left, her heels echoing in the empty bar, Riley felt the weight of her words settle like dust. She didn't know Elise's name carried power, that her empire had crushed dreams bigger than this bar. But she felt the shift, the spark of something dangerous. And deep down, in a place she rarely visited, Riley wondered if Elise was right, if there was something more, something she'd buried long ago. The next evening, the rusty nail buzzed with its usual chaos, but Riley's mind was elsewhere. Elise's words, "You're bigger than this," had wormed their way into her thoughts, gnawing at her like an old wound. She shook it off, slinging beers to a rowdy group of locals, but her eyes kept darting to the door, half expecting those heels to click through again. They did. Elise walked in just as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the bar's windows in shades of fire. Tonight, she wore a deep green dress that hugged her frame, less corporate but no less commanding. Riley's stomach flipped, and she hated herself for it. She wasn't some starry-eyed kid. She'd learned long ago to keep her guard up. But Elise had a way of slipping past defenses, like a thief in the night. Back for more whiskey? Riley asked, forcing a grin as Elise approached the bar. Something stronger, Elise said, her voice teasing but laced with intent. How about you surprise me? Riley grabbed a bottle of rye, pouring a double with a flourish. Careful what you wish for. Their banter was sharp, electric, like a dance neither had rehearsed but both knew by heart. Elise settled in, watching Riley work, her presence a quiet challenge. Riley felt it, the weight of being seen, not just as the bartender, but as something more. It unnerved her. She'd spent years building walls, keeping people at arm's length. Willow Creek wasn't kind to those who didn't fit its mold, and Riley had learned to wear her tomboy edge like armor. But Elise? She looked at Riley like she was a puzzle to solve. As the night wore on, Elise didn't leave. She stayed through the rush, through the bad karaoke and spilled drinks, her eyes never straying far from Riley. It was past midnight when the bar quieted, and Elise finally spoke up, her voice cutting through the jukebox's hum. Why this place? She asked, leaning forward, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. You could be anywhere. Why stay in a town that doesn't get you? Riley froze, her rag mid-swipe on the counter. Who says they don't get me? Elise's lips curved, not quite a smile. Small towns talk. I've heard things. You're different. And I don't think you're here just for the beer. The air thickened. Riley's pulse quickened, her mind racing. She'd heard the whispers her whole life. Lesbian, loner, trouble. But she'd never confirmed or denied them. She didn't owe anyone answers. Yet Elise's gaze, steady and unyielding, made her feel like she was running out of places to hide. Maybe I like the beer, Riley said, her voice low, deflecting. Maybe I don't need a city to tell me who I am. Elise leaned closer, her breath warm against the bar's cool air. Or maybe you're scared to find out. The words hit like a punch. Riley's jaw clenched, but before she could fire back, a crash from the back room broke the moment. A drunk regular had knocked over a stack of crates, and Riley cursed under her breath, grateful for the distraction. She stormed off to handle it, but Elise's words clung to her, heavy and unshakable. By the time Riley returned, Elise was gone, leaving only a crisp $100 bill tucked under her glass and a note scribbled on a napkin. Think about my offer. Riley stared at it, her chest tight. She didn't know if Elise meant the bar or something else entirely, but both felt like a threat to the life she'd built. The next few days were a blur of routine, pouring drinks, breaking up fights, keeping the rusty nail alive. But Elise kept showing up, each visit more charged than the last. She'd sit at the bar, asking questions that cut too close, about Riley's past, her dreams, why she stayed in Willow Creek when she could have left. Riley dodged most of them, but each conversation left her more exposed, like Elise was peeling away her armor piece by piece. Then came the bombshell. On a quiet Tuesday, Elise slid a folder across the bar, her expression unreadable. "Read it," she said simply. Riley opened it, her heart sinking as she scanned the pages. It was a proposal, a detailed plan to buy the rusty nail, gut it, and turn it into some upscale lounge for tourists. The numbers were staggering, enough to set Riley up for life. But the bar wasn't just a business. It was her home, her defiance, her proof she could survive without anyone's help. "You're serious," Riley said, her voice flat, shoving the folder back. "You think I'd sell my soul for this?" Elise didn't flinch. "It's not about your soul. It's about what you're worth. You're wasting your potential here, Riley. I can see it, even if you can't." Riley's hands shook as she gripped the counter. "Get out." Elise didn't move, her eyes searching Riley's face. "You're angry because you know I'm right. You're hiding here, pretending this bar is enough. But it's not. And neither is this town." The words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. Riley had spent years running, from her past, from questions she didn't want to answer, from feelings she didn't want to name. Elise saw it all, and that terrified her. "Get out," Riley repeated, her voice breaking. Elise stood, her expression softening for the first time. "I'll be back, Riley. You can't hide forever." As the door swung shut behind her, Riley sank onto a stool, her breath ragged. The bar was empty, but it felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. She didn't know what scared her more, Elise's offer or the way her heart raced every time Elise looked at her. For the first time in years, Riley felt something she couldn't name, and it wasn't just fear. Riley didn't sleep that night. She lay on the creaky cot in the bar's back room, staring at the ceiling, Elise's words looping in her mind. "You can't hide forever." By dawn, she was behind the counter again, pouring coffee for early regulars, but her thoughts were a storm. Elise wasn't just after the bar. She was after Riley, or at least the version of Riley she thought she understood. The rusty nail had always been her shield, a place where she could be herself without questions. Growing up in Willow Creek, Riley had learned to navigate the sidelong glances, the muttered slurs. She'd never dated, never let anyone close enough to ask why. It wasn't that she didn't feel things. She did, deeply, but admitting them felt like handing a loaded gun to a town that already judged her. Elise's arrival had cracked that shield, and Riley wasn't sure how to fix it. When Elise walked in that evening, Riley's heart lurched. She wore a simple black sweater, her usual polish softened, but her presence still filled the room. Riley busied herself with a stack of glasses, avoiding eye contact. She didn't want to see that knowing look again, the one that made her feel like Elise could read her soul. "Still mad?" Elise asked, sliding onto her usual stool. Riley didn't look up. "Not mad, just not interested." Elise chuckled, low and warm. "Liar. You're curious. I can tell." Riley's hands stilled. She wanted to snap back, to tell Elise to leave her alone, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she poured a shot of bourbon and slid it across the counter. "Drink. Then go." Elise took the glass but didn't drink. "I'm not your enemy, Riley. I'm offering you a way out. A chance to be more." "Stop saying that," Riley snapped, her voice louder than she meant. A few heads turned, and she lowered it, leaning closer. "You don't know me. You don't know what I want." "Then tell me," Elise said, her voice soft but unyielding. What do you want, Riley? The question hung there, raw and exposed. Riley's throat tightened. She wanted to say the bar, her freedom, her quiet life. But the truth was messier, buried under years of fear and defiance. She wanted to be seen, not as the tomboy, the loner, or the bartender, but as herself. And Elise, with her relentless questions, was the first person in years who seemed to want that too. Before Riley could answer, the door swung open and a group of locals stumbled in, loud and already half-drunk. One of them, a burly guy named Jake, spotted Elise and grinned. Well, look at this. City girls back for our Riley, huh? Riley's face burned. Shut it, Jake. He laughed, nudging his buddy. What's the deal, Harper? Sheer type, or what? The bar went quiet, the air thick with anticipation. Riley's fists clenched, but Elise spoke first, her voice calm but sharp as a blade.
Careful, Jake.
You're punching above your weight. The crowd hooted, and Jake's grin faltered. Riley shot Elise a look, half grateful, half furious. She didn't need saving, but Elise's quick defense stirred something in her, something she wasn't ready to name. The night dragged on, and Elise stayed, her presence a quiet anchor amidst the chaos. When the bar finally emptied, she lingered, watching Riley clean up. You didn't answer my question, Elise said, her voice gentle now. What do you want? Riley paused, her rag dripping onto the counter. I want you to stop trying to buy my life. Elise's eyes softened. I'm not trying to buy your life, Riley. I'm trying to understand it. The sincerity in her voice caught Riley off guard. For a moment, she saw past Elise's polished exterior, the confidence, the wealth, and glimpsed something vulnerable, something real. It scared her as much as it drew her in. Over the next week, Elise became a fixture at the Rusty Nail. She didn't push the sale again, but her presence was relentless, her questions sharper each time. She asked about Riley's childhood, her dreams, the bar's history. Riley gave short answers, but each one felt like giving up ground. Elise was patient, but her patience felt like a siege, wearing Riley down until she couldn't ignore the pull between them. One night, after closing, Elise stayed to help stack chairs, her sleeves rolled up, her hands smudged with dust.
Riley watched, stunned. You don't have to do that, she said.
I want to, Elise replied, her smile small but genuine. This place matters to you. I get it. Riley's chest ached. No one had ever cared enough to see the bar through her eyes. She turned away, busying herself with the cash register, but Elise's presence lingered, warm and unsettling. As they locked up, Elise paused by the door, the moonlight catching her face. You're not what I expected, Riley Harper. Riley met her gaze, her voice barely above a whisper. What did you expect? Elise hesitated, then stepped closer, her breath visible in the cold night air. Someone who knows who they are. But you're still figuring it out, aren't you? Riley's heart pounded. She wanted to deny it, to push Elise away, but the truth was too heavy to ignore. She was figuring it out, not just who she was, but what she felt. And Elise, with her sharp eyes and relentless heart, was making it impossible to keep running. The air in Willow Creek turned colder, mirroring the tension building in Riley's chest. Elise's visits to the Rusty Nail were no longer just a disruption. They were a reckoning. Each conversation, each glance, chipped away at the walls Riley had spent years building. She told herself it was about the bar, about protecting her life, but deep down, she knew it was more. Elise wasn't just a threat to her business. She was a threat to the carefully guarded truth Riley had never spoken aloud. One rainy evening, the bar was quieter than usual, the patter of rain against the windows drowning out the jukebox. Elise sat at her usual spot, her presence as steady as ever. Riley tried to focus on work, but her hands shook as she poured drinks. She couldn't shake the memory of Elise's words. You're still figuring it out, aren't you? They echoed in her mind, stirring feelings she'd buried since she was a teenager, feelings she'd convinced herself were too dangerous to face. "You're quiet tonight," Elise said, breaking the silence. She sipped her drink, her eyes never leaving Riley. "Just tired," Riley lied, wiping the counter for the third time. "Long day." Elise tilted her head, unconvinced. "You don't strike me as someone who gets tired. What's really going on?" Riley's grip tightened on the rag. She wanted to snap, to tell Elise to mind her own business, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she felt a pull, like gravity, drawing her toward the truth. "Why do you care?" she asked, her voice low, almost a challenge. Elise leaned forward, her voice soft but firm. "Because I see you, Riley. Not the bartender, not the tough girl everyone else sees. You. And I think you're scared of what that means." The words hit like a wave, knocking the air from Riley's lungs. She turned away, busying herself with a stack of glasses, but her hands trembled. Elise was right, she was scared. Scared of the whispers, the judgment, the truth she'd never admitted, even to herself. She'd spent her life running from it, hiding behind the bar, behind her flannel and her defiance. But Elise saw through it all, and that terrified her. Before she could respond, the door swung open, and a man in a slick suit walked in, his presence jarring against the bar's rustic charm. He introduced himself as Marcus, Elise's business associate, and slid a new proposal across the counter. This one was different, more aggressive, with a deadline. "Ms. Thornton's offering a premium," he said, his tone clipped. "Sign by the end of the week, or we'll look into other ways to acquire the property." Riley's blood ran cold. She glanced at Elise, who looked away, her jaw tight. "This your idea of a deal?" Riley asked, her voice sharp. "Threaten me into selling?" Elise stood, her expression unreadable. "It's business, Riley. You don't have to like it." "Business." Riley's voice rose, drawing eyes from the few patrons left. "This is my home. You think you can just waltz in and take it?" Marcus smirked, but Elise raised a hand, silencing him. "It's not about taking," she said, her voice softer now. "It's about what's best for you. This place is holding you back." Riley's vision blurred with anger, and something else. Betrayal. She'd let Elise in, let her see parts of herself no one else had. And now this? "Get out," she said, her voice shaking. "Both of you." Marcus shrugged and left, but Elise lingered, her eyes searching Riley's face. "I'm not giving up," she said quietly. "Not on the bar. And not on you." The door closed behind her, and Riley sank onto a stool, her breath ragged. The bar felt emptier than ever, the weight of Elise's words and the proposal crushing her. She didn't know what hurt more, the threat to her bar or the way Elise's gaze made her heart ache with something she couldn't name. The next few days were a blur of anger and doubt. Riley threw herself into work, avoiding Elise's visits, but the proposal loomed like a storm cloud. She couldn't afford to fight a legal battle, not against someone like Elise. The bar was her lifeline, but it was also her cage, keeping her tied to a town that had never fully accepted her. One night, after closing, Riley found herself alone with her thoughts. She pulled out an old photo from her wallet, a picture of her and her mother, taken before things fell apart. Her mother had always told her to be strong, to never let anyone define her. But what did that mean when Riley didn't even know who she was? The door creaked open, and Elise stepped inside, her coat damp from the rain. Riley's heart leapt, but she steeled herself. "We're closed," she said, her voice flat. "I'm not here for a drink," Elise said, her tone softer than Riley expected. She stepped closer, her eyes filled with something raw, something real. "I'm sorry about Marcus. I didn't want it to go like that." "Then why do it?" Riley asked, her voice breaking. "Why come after my bar? Why come after me?" Elise hesitated, then closed the distance between them. "Because I see something in you, Riley. Something worth fighting for. And I think you feel it too." Riley's breath caught. She wanted to push Elise away, to hold on to her anger. but the truth was clawing its way out. She felt it, the pull, the heat, the terrifying possibility of something more. For the first time, she didn't want to run. The rain didn't stop, and neither did Elise. She came to the Rusty Nail every night, her presence a quiet storm Riley couldn't escape. Each visit was a dance, teasing banter, loaded glances, moments of vulnerability that left Riley reeling. She wanted to hate Elise, to see her as just another rich outsider trying to take what wasn't hers. But the truth was messier. Elise wasn't just after the bar, she was after Riley's heart, and that was a battle Riley wasn't sure she could win. One night, the bar was empty, the storm keeping even the regulars away. Riley was sweeping the floor when Elise walked in, her hair damp, her eyes softer than usual. "You're gonna catch a cold," Riley said, trying to keep things light. Elise smiled, shaking off her coat. "Worth it to see you." Riley's heart skipped, but she turned away, focusing on the broom. "You don't quit, do you?" "Not when it matters," Elise said, stepping closer. "And you matter, Riley. More than you know." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Riley gripped the broom tighter, her knuckles white. She wanted to believe Elise, to let herself feel the pull that had been growing since that first night. But fear was a powerful thing, and Riley had spent her life running from it. "Stop," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't know what you're asking." Elise didn't back down. She reached out, her hand brushing Riley's arm, sending a jolt through her. "Then tell me, what am I asking?" Riley's breath hitched. She turned to face Elise, their faces inches apart. The bar faded away, the world narrowing to just the two of them. "You're asking me to be someone I'm not sure I can be," Riley said, her voice raw. "This town, it doesn't forgive people like me." Elise's eyes softened, but her grip tightened, grounding Riley. "You don't need their forgiveness. You need to forgive yourself." The words broke something in Riley. She pulled away, her chest tight, and sank onto a stool. "You don't get it," she said, her voice trembling. "I've spent my whole life hiding. From them, from myself. I don't even know what I want anymore." Elise sat beside her, close enough that Riley could feel her warmth. "Then let me help you figure it out," she said softly. "No pressure, no games. Just you and me." Riley looked at her, really looked, and saw something she hadn't before: vulnerability. Elise wasn't the untouchable millionaire she'd seemed. She was a woman who'd fought her own battles, who'd built an empire, but still carried wounds. And in that moment, Riley realized they weren't so different. They talked for hours, the rain a steady rhythm outside. Elise shared pieces of her life, growing up in a wealthy but cold family, coming out as a lesbian in her 20s, building her empire to prove she was more than her parents' expectations. Riley listened, her guard slipping with every word. She didn't share much, not yet, but Elise's honesty was a lifeline, pulling her towards something she'd never dared to reach for. The next night, Elise brought a different kind of proposal, not for the bar, but for Riley. "Come to Seattle," she said, her voice earnest. "Just for a weekend.
See what's out there.
You don't have to sell the bar. You don't have to decide anything. Just see." Riley's first instinct was to say no, to cling to the safety of her bar, her town. But Elise's eyes held a promise, a possibility that scared her as much as it thrilled her. "Why me?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Because you're worth it," Elise said simply. "And I think you're ready to find out what that means." Riley didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. The idea of leaving, even for a weekend, felt like stepping off a cliff. But as Elise left that night, her hand brushing Riley's in a fleeting, electric moment, Riley felt something shift. She wasn't ready to name it, but she was tired of running. The next day, the bar was busier than usual, a distraction Riley welcomed. But the proposal, and Elise's other offer, loomed large. She caught herself watching the door, her heart leaping every time it opened. When Elise finally walked in, Riley's breath caught. She wasn't sure if she was ready to leave Willow Creek, but she was starting to realize she couldn't keep hiding from herself. As the night wound down, Elise stayed, helping Riley close up again. They worked in comfortable silence, the air charged with unspoken possibilities. When they stepped outside, the rain had stopped, and the stars were bright above Willow Creek. Elise turned to Riley, her expression soft but determined. "I'm not asking you to change who you are," she said. "I'm asking you to let yourself be." Riley's throat tightened. She didn't have an answer, not yet, but for the first time, she felt like she might find one. And as Elise's hand found hers in the dark, Riley didn't pull away. Riley stood at the edge of a decision, her life balanced on a knife's edge. The rusty nail was still hers, but Elise's offer, to see Seattle, to see herself, had cracked something open. She'd spent years burying her feelings, convincing herself she didn't need anyone, but Elise's persistence was a mirror, reflecting truths Riley could no longer ignore. She said yes to Seattle, though the word felt like a leap into the unknown. Elise arranged everything: a flight, a hotel, a weekend away from Willow Creek's suffocating gaze. As the plane touched down in Seattle, Riley's heart pounded. The city was overwhelming: skyscrapers, crowds, a pulse so different from her quiet town. Elise was different here too, more relaxed, her smile brighter as she showed Riley her world. They walked through Pike Place Market, the air alive with the scent of coffee and salt water. Elise pointed out her favorite stalls, her laughter easy, unguarded. Riley watched her, feeling the walls she'd built start to crumble. For the first time, she let herself imagine a life beyond the bar, beyond the whispers. Elise didn't push, didn't ask for answers, but her presence was a steady invitation to be more. That night, in a quiet restaurant overlooking the water, Elise reached for Riley's hand across the table. "What do you think?" she asked, her voice soft. "Could you see yourself here?" Riley's throat tightened. "I don't know," she admitted. "This is a lot. But being here, with you, it feels right." Elise's smile was radiant, but there was a flicker of hesitation in her eyes. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice lower now. "When I first came to Willow Creek, I thought I knew you. I heard the rumors, assumed you were like me. I was wrong to assume. But I wasn't wrong about you." Riley's heart raced. She'd known Elise had assumptions, everyone in Willow Creek did, but hearing it aloud was different. It wasn't anger she felt, but relief. Elise had seen her, not as a label, but as a person. And that was more than Riley had ever dared to hope for. "I don't know what I am," Riley said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've never let myself figure it out. But with you I want to." Elise's hand tightened around hers, and for a moment, the world was just them. No bar, no town, no past. Just two women, raw and real, finding each other in the chaos. The weekend passed in a blur of moments, quiet walks, late-night talks, stolen glances that lingered longer each time. Riley felt herself opening, like a flower after a long winter. She told Elise things she'd never told anyone, about her father's anger, her mother's absence, the loneliness that had shaped her. Elise listened, her eyes steady, her hand a constant anchor. But the bar still loomed. Elise hadn't mentioned the proposal again, but Riley knew it was there, a shadow over their connection. On their last night in Seattle, Riley brought it up, her voice steady despite the fear in her chest. "What happens to the bar, if we?" Elise's expression softened. "I don't want the bar, Riley. Not anymore. I want you to choose what makes you happy. If that's the rusty nail, I'll back off. If it's something else, I'll be here." Riley's eyes burned with unshed tears. No one had ever given her that kind of freedom, that kind of trust. She leaned across the table, her lips brushing Elise's in a kiss that felt like a promise. It was her first, and it was everything: terrifying, exhilarating, true. When they returned to Willow Creek, the bar felt different, smaller. Riley worked the counter, but her mind was still in Seattle, still with Elise. The locals noticed the change. Her smile was brighter, her eyes less guarded. Jake and his crew made their usual jabs, but they bounced off her now. She wasn't hiding anymore. Elise stayed in town, renting a small cabin by the river. She came to the bar every night, not as a threat but as a partner, helping Riley close up, sharing quiet moments that felt like the start of something real. But the proposal still hung over them, a reminder of the world Elise came from. Riley knew she had to make a choice, not just about the bar, but about who she wanted to be. One night, as they locked up, Riley stopped Elise by the door, her heart pounding. "I'm not ready to sell," she said, "but I'm ready for this. For us." Elise's smile was brighter than the neon signs outside. "That's all I need to hear," she said, pulling Riley close. The rusty nail hummed with life, but Riley was no longer tethered to it. Her nights with Elise had become a new kind of sanctuary, one built on trust and truth. She'd spent years hiding, fearing what it meant to feel, to love, but Elise had changed that. The bar was still hers, but it wasn't her cage anymore. The truth came out slowly, not in a grand declaration, but in quiet moments. Riley told Elise about the feelings she'd buried, the fear of being seen as different in a town that didn't forgive. Elise listened, her presence a steady anchor, and shared her own story, coming out in a world that expected perfection, building a life on her own terms. They were two women shaped by different battles, but their scars fit together, like pieces of a puzzle neither had known was incomplete. The bar's future was still uncertain. Elise withdrew the proposal, but Riley knew the rusty nail couldn't stay the same forever. Willow Creek was changing. New faces, new businesses, a world that was bigger than the one she'd grown up in. One night, as they sat on the riverbank behind the bar, Riley made a decision. "I'm not selling," she said, her voice steady. "But I'm not staying stuck either. I want to make this place something more, something that's mine, but also ours." Elise's eyes lit up. "What are you thinking?" "A community space," Riley said, the idea taking shape as she spoke. "A place for people like us, who don't fit the mold. Live music, open mics, maybe even a pride night. Willow Creek's not ready for it, but maybe it's time they were." Elise laughed, pulling Riley close. "You're incredible, you know that?" They worked together, turning the rusty nail into something new. Elise used her connections to bring in musicians, artists, people who saw the bar's potential. Riley opened up, not just to Elise but to the town, sharing pieces of herself she'd kept hidden. The locals didn't all understand, but some did, enough to make a difference. The bar became a beacon, a place where people could be themselves, no matter who they were. One night, months later, the Rusty Nail hosted its first Pride event. The bar was packed, rainbow flags draped over the tables, laughter and music filling the air. Riley stood behind the counter, her flannel swapped for a crisp white shirt, her smile unguarded. Elise was beside her, their hands brushing as they poured drinks together. Jake and his crew were there, quieter than usual, but they stayed, and Riley saw something like respect in their eyes. As the night wound down, Riley stepped outside, Elise following. The river sparkled under the stars, and Riley felt a peace she'd never known. "I was scared," she admitted, her voice soft. "Scared of this, of you, of me. But I'm not anymore." Elise took her hand, her eyes shining. "You're the bravest person I know, Riley Harper." They kissed, slow and sure, the world falling away. The Rusty Nail wasn't just a bar anymore, it was a home, a community, a testament to what happened when you stopped running and started living. Riley had thought Elise came to take everything away, but she'd been wrong. Elise had given her something better, the courage to be herself. The truth wasn't what Elise had expected, but it was better. Riley wasn't defined by labels or assumptions. She was just Riley, a woman who loved fiercely, who built a life from nothing and made it something extraordinary. And as they stood by the river, hand in hand, Riley knew this was just the beginning. The bar, the town, her heart, they were all open now, ready for whatever came next.